Hi, I have two questions for you. Here's the first. Do you feel like you walk around on eggshells in your long term relationship? And here's the second. Are you tired of it? I'm Terry Real, the founder of Relational Life Therapy, a unique method for working with couples to increase intimacy and move beyond patriarchy, move beyond traditional gender roles for all sex. So let's talk about walking on eggshells. I don't want to set him off. I don't want to trigger one of her harangues. Many of us are in our relationships riding in the one up, more aggressive, more powerful, to be honest, position, less responsible. And many of us are in the one down, hyper responsible, more responsible in some ways to the relationship than our partners are being. People call this codependence. People call this love addiction. You're trying to manage the person that you're living with because you're afraid to be forthright with them. And you're afraid for good reason. Person you are walking around on eggshells with probably is in a state of, the technical term is grandiosity. There are two self esteem disorders. The one that you may be wrestling with is shame, feeling one down, feeling defective or unlovable. And the wound from your childhood that you may be wrestling with and may haunt you is abandonment. It's hard for you to assert yourself because you're afraid of what the consequences will be if you do. And many of us who wind up in that position in our relationships, particularly if it's that position repeated over and over again, have histories of being emotionally, if not physically, abandoned as kids. It's hard for us to be alone. It's hard for us to tolerate the break in connection when our partner is dissatisfied with us. And so, interestingly enough, we often wind up with partners who are volatile, erratic, aggressive, and then we spend the bulk of our relationships dancing around them and trying not to set them off because what it feels like to us when they either angrily withdraw, they attack us, is just too awful to bear. So we have to do some internal work, and it may be with a therapist or a shaman or whatever, but we have to move into a modicum of recovery around self esteem. We have to deal with that little boy or little girl that felt so abandoned and tolerate what it feels like when there's a break. Usually, if you're walking around on eggshells with your partner and you came to see me, I would tell you that you're love dependent or you're a love addict. What does that mean? It means that you're supplementing your shaky sense of self esteem, self love, the capacity to hold yourself warmly, consistently, with their esteem of you, their warm connection. And when the drug of their warm connection is flowing, there's a sense that all's well with the world and you feel great. And when there's a crimp in the hose, so that the drug of their warm regard is not flowing, for example, you piss them off, then you go into a self esteem well being crash. And that can feel like emptiness, loneliness, jaggedness, coldness, darkness, fear. It's an early child ego state of abandonment. And it probably comes from a childhood history of being abandoned. Adults don't get abandoned, adults get left. Abandon really feels like without you, I die. What's happening is that love addiction is a process. I learned this from my mentor, P. Melody, who wrote a whole book called Facing Love Addiction. It's great. Love addiction is a process where you project abundance onto that person. They become the source of all. And then you merge with that person and reappropriate the abundance that you gave to them to begin with. And when you're feeling that, like they just walked away with all the oxygen in the air, sit down, take a moment, and practice what I call remembering abundance. Feel it right now as you're listening to me speak. Breathe and feel the sweetness of your breath. This conversation is abundant. Odds are there aren't bombs dropping. You're not terminally ill. You're in a state of modicum of security. This breath is abundant. sitting here in peace with each other is abundant. And in my marriage, if Belinda gets mad and storms off, which doesn't happen that much anymore, but used to, I will sit down and breathe and feel this breath and remember that this moment is abundant. I'm okay. My partner did not walk off with all the abundance in the universe, leaving me in a state of desperate impoverishment. That's the internal work you have to do in order to have enough self esteem and good boundaries to not walk around on eggshells. And then what do? You tell the truth. You tell the truth with skill. I recommend you listening to my audio tape. You can find it on Audible, Fierce Intimacy, and reading my new book, Us. I talk about speaking up for yourself with love, which is rare in our culture, not harsh, but loving, but still asserting. This isn't working for me. Honey, I want to hear what you have to say. Could you please tone it down so I could really listen to you? There's a way of being soft and loving and firm and assertive all at the same time, but we have to learn it. But it may not go well, no matter how skilled you are, particularly if your partner is used to getting their way and huffing and puffing and blowing the house down. And in fact, if you're with an extremely grandiose person, standing up to them may be putting the whole relationship in jeopardy. But you see, the capacity to risk the relationship, I believe, is part of being in a healthy, passionate relationship. You have to be willing to say no. And no means if you don't change this or that, we're done. All healthy relationships have limits. If you don't have limits, then you're a slave. You accept whatever treatment you're getting. So I'm asking those listening to get centered in what I call becoming a relationship champion. Get centered in the conviction that it is your birthright to be in an essentially cherishing relationship, one in which you are cherished and you can cherish. And if you're in an essentially uncherishing relationship by somebody who walls off and distances, or somebody who is boundaryless and attacks, or both, it is not in your interest to stay in that relationship. It is not good for you. It is not good for your children. I believe it's not good for the uncherishing partner. So if you don't get listened to, get help. Get a therapist to back you up and get a therapist to back you up. Go to my website and get a relational life therapist. You don't want a neutral therapist that says, well, that's your opinion. What's yours? You want somebody who's really going to support you in taking on the irresponsible, either attacking or distancing behavior of your partner. RLT therapists would say, you're right. And they would say of your irresponsible partner, you need to shape up. And here's why. Most therapists won't do that. So if you can't get through to your partner, find a therapist. And if your therapist isn't supporting you, find a different therapist. At the end of the day, if you are putting out your experience skillfully, if you're front loading what you want rather than criticizing what you don't want, if you're offering yourself as a helpmate, what can I do to help you treat me better? If you're using all these skills, if you're in therapy and the therapist is supporting you and your grandiose partner is just having none of it, then you have to do a relational reckoning. Am I getting enough in this long term relationship to make putting up with this behavior worth my while? And if the answer is yes, okay, you're with a volatile partner who goes off on you from time to time, or a distancer who walls off. But, it's not so bad. It's infrequent and you get fine. Still stand up to them when it's happening, but okay. But if the answer is no, I'm not really being treated well in this relationship. I've stood up to the person. I've brought the person to an effective therapist, and I'm still not being treated well in this relationship, then get out. And that's grim news. But I don't think it's a favor to you. And I don't think it's a favor to your children. Children suffer when their parents split up. And if you don't split up, you will be handing down a template of this kind of emotional violence or distance to your kids. And that will be their reference for a relationship. And that's the kind of relationship they'll have. So you have to think about how you're being treated, what kind of modeling you're presenting to your children, and make some tough decisions. But first, stand up. Stand up with love. Honey, I want to be close to you. You're a wonderful partner. This kind of emotional violence or distance is just killing us. What do you need? That's a relational approach. What do you need? In relational life therapy, we're big fans of timeouts. Somebody gets triggered, they get flooded, they're about to lose their wise adult composure. Take a break. You negotiate that up front so that everybody knows what's going on. I'm going to take a break and I'll get back to you in 20 minutes. There's always a promise of return. It's a break, not a rupture. I'll take a break. I'll be back to you. And you can take a break when your partner's behaving badly or treating you in ways that don't work for you. I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in 20, 30 minutes. I'll check in with you then. And when you check in, you could extend the break. Everybody should go to my website and download the 10 commandments of how to take a formal timeout. And timeouts, I believe, are the antidote to emotional violence, to this kind of flooding and spilling. The issue is when you do two things. One is you will experience that feeling of abandonment. That little boy or girl in you will go, no, no, we've got to resolve this. We've got to, because you don't want to feel the disjuncture. But it's okay. Nobody's going to die. Take some distance, better distance than yelling and screaming and carrying on. So you take a break if your partner won't, and let them know that you're changing the rules. There's a new world order. I am not going to sit and tolerate your treating me disrespectfully. I don't treat you disrespectfully, and I expect the same in return. So you can't control your partner, but you don't have to sit there and let yourself get trashed. This is what I call full respect living. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this respectful? If it isn't, you stop. As you're listening, you ask yourself, am I being respectfully treated? If you're not, you stop. You can't control the other person, but you don't have to sit there and pretend that it's all right. It's not all right. If you stand up to someone who is used to mistreating you and others, you are putting the relationship at risk. The bottom line is they may say, screw you, I'm going to go find somebody else who's more compliant and more of a doormat, and I don't need this from you. But the question is, do you really need that from them? So I am the guy who dictated the Audible book, Fierce Intimacy. I believe in fierce intimacy. I believe that what happens when you scurry around and don't take on your partner is that resentment builds in you. Generosity dries up, sexuality dries up, and your resentment leaks out sideways. It is poison to a relationship. And particularly if it's a heterosexual relationship and you're an over accommodating woman. Let me tell you something. I've been doing therapy for almost 40 years now. I can't tell you the number of women who put up with irresponsible, selfish, aggressive behavior from their men to try and keep the peace and keep the family together. They over accommodate, they resent it, they distance, connection and passion dries up because you're no longer telling the truth to each other. And guess what happens? The guys go off 20 years later with a younger woman anyway, telling you the marriage has been dead for years. And they're right. It has been dead because you haven't been taking them on. You haven't been telling them the truth. So over accommodation is not safer. It's just quieter. Pick your poison. Me, I say, stand up. It's not good to be bullied. It robs you of intimacy. It robs you of self-esteem. It's not good for the bully any more than it's good for you. And it's certainly not good for your children. So stand up, read us, which will teach you how to stand up with love. Listen to Fierce Intimacy. go to my website, get a good therapist, get a coach, get an individual therapist if you need one to help you develop enough spine to take these risks. I'm Terry Real. Thank you for listening. I really welcome your comments at the bottom of this video. And I invite you to come to my website, terryreal.com, download that Take a Time Out one pager. Don't manage them. You deserve